Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Robert Stickle. I'm also joined by my colleague Jim Patterson. Jim will be today's presenter and will discuss the topic of extending Azure DevOps and Jira into an Agile portfolio management solution. This webinar is a new addition to our series of Agile webinars, so if you enjoy this video, feel free to watch the others we have available on our channel and look towards the next installment, which we'll be releasing soon. And as always, I hope that today's presentation grants you some insights into the world of project and portfolio management and gets you excited for the new developments happening within the industry and here at OnePlan. Thank you again. I'll now turn the presentation over to Jim.
Thank you, Robert. Welcome, everybody. We're excited to bring you this topic today. It's something that's in demand by a lot of organizations today, and we're seeing a lot of activity in this area. So we want to describe for you in a little more detail what this solution would entail of extending Azure DevOps and Jira into an Agile portfolio management solution. Now, what's driving the need for all this is primarily digital transformation, but overall, the pace of change in the world today and in organizations to stay atop of things, to stay competitive, is getting faster, and the pace of change is getting increasingly more rapid. We've seen it happen where this digital transformation is really determining who's winners and losers longer term, as far as meeting with the needs of the marketplace and the needs of the customer and the consumer. And whether it be department stores, the way we consume media, the way we book travel and get transportation, or even the way we buy cars or the way we manufacture cars. It requires digital transformation to stay on top of this and stay at the forefront of where we're at. And it impacts all parts of the organization, from the executives who outline the strategy all the way down to the people who have to execute and support these things. And if we don't find ways to get better at this, we're going to get left behind. So customers need to get results and make decisions faster, meaning we have to shift more to the left in this model in here, where we deliver faster and more incrementally over time, and making sure that we're responding to customer value and what they want in the marketplace so that we remain relative. And we can't do it with the traditional model where we planned, designed, developed, and build and test over a long period of time and then deliver a big deliverable at the end of it. To be quite frank, by the time we get to that time over a long duration project, the needs of the customer and the needs of the marketplace may have already changed. So in that end, there's still different methodologies and frameworks in place. Now, Agile is growing. Agile is a direction that most people are going. Most organizations have Agile going on somewhere in the organization to some degree. It's the preponderance of things that they're doing. But there is some still waterfall stuff being used. There's some Agile variants and hybrids that are out there, or even cherry-picked versions of this. But the idea of people are moving in a way to try and provide more agility into their organizations. Now, you might ask yourself where you are in the Agile transformation spectrum, and you could be anywhere on this. From the right in the green, where it was more traditional project portfolio management with traditional PPM and governance and waterfall types of methodologies. And the aspiration might be to get all the way over to the left, into the dark blue, with full Agile execution and Agile portfolio management. But the reality is that to get from the green to the dark blue usually takes years when it comes to putting in the frameworks and the methodologies and the culture changes and the buy-in and the attitudes. And so in the middle, there's this adaptive portfolio management where there's a mix of methodologies where you're doing a bit of both. And that may be transitionary as you move over to Agile, all the way on the left. But the idea is you need tools and processes that support you wherever you're at in this spectrum. And OnePlan, as we're going to show you today, is designed to help you wherever you're at. And we're going to focus on the Agile portfolio management piece today, but the flexibility is there to handle it wherever you're at in this transformation spectrum. So let's just say, you're in that interim mix where you got a collaboration of things, where you got adaptive, more hybrid types of things. You're using people with different methodologies, some more Agile and iterative, some more waterfall, a variety of tools that are out there, whether it be Azure DevOps, Microsoft Project, Jira, Planner. We have a lot of folks using OnePlan out there today only, but the idea is that you may have all this going on across your organization, different methodologies and tools, but the organization still needs a holistic view of a portfolio and have portfolio management that harnesses and captures the information from all of that and manages all that. Now, excuse me. you know, the teams need to do work the way that is most conducive to the type of projects and the type of initiatives that they have. But leadership still needs what they need at those levels and roll those up in more traditional ways, maybe into programs and portfolios. Maybe those portfolios span different business units, and then maybe have strategies that they're aligned with at the top. Now, if we go down to a more focus for today, where let's say everybody's doing Agile in the organization, or at least your part of the organization is doing Agile, irrespective of whether or not everybody's doing iterative at that team or execution level, regardless of the tools that they're using, leadership still needs what they need. And you may be organizing this in a different fashion, where the roll-up levels in here and the summary levels might be more, epics and value streams and portfolios above those, and then aligning them with strategies. But the key here is that the teams may be at first a completely Agile mindset, but leadership may still be in the language of the business before we get full adoption in that mindset from top to bottom in the organization. So as we look at that, the metrics that people use, and the teams may be using traditional Agile metrics like burn-ups and burn-downs of velocity and those types of things, where leadership at the portfolio level may still need more traditional metrics like financial metrics, or milestones and deliverables and other things that they'd like to see as they manage it from a more business perspective. Now, that doesn't preclude the fact that leadership could be completely in alignment with the Agile focus, but that may not happen right at first. And the idea here is that we're going to show you some things today that allow you to bridge that gap and accommodate the needs of both audiences. Now, with the prevalence of Agile happening out there, as it starts taking hold more and more places of the organization, and the need for digital transformation, which means we have things that have to impact the entire organization, not just departmentally or in different business units. A lot of organizations are moving to ePMOs instead of having multiple departmental or business unit PMOs in their organization. And this is to best ensure strategy to execution alignment across enterprise-wide initiatives that have to happen. If you're going to digitally transform or make major changes, every part of the organization needs to be in play. We can't have it siloed in our efforts, more departmentally or business unit focused. So these enterprise level objectives and desired outcomes is the focus of that ePMO. And to that end, that means all this Agile work that's going on in different pockets of the organization has necessitated some type of bringing it together with more scaled Agile frameworks and principles and practices. Now, there's a lot of different frameworks out there for scaling Agile, as this picture is meant to depict. SAFe is definitely the one that's most preeminent that's out there. But the idea is, how do you harness that to make sure that you get a more scaled framework and portfolio management across all of this is really the key and some of the challenge. Now, OnePlan, as we're going to show you today, has modules for Agile portfolio management. So, while a lot of the Agile tools that people are using out there, and we're going to talk about Azure DevOps and Jira today, are good at doing the execution level of things down at the individual team level and the individual work effort, but they struggle to deliver the value of everything that's required for more Agile portfolio management at the portfolio level. What OnePlan does bring to the table is portfolio planning and visibility, whether it be more boards like you see here, more traditional list views of your portfolio, or even roadmap types of views of that portfolio and working with it in a bunch of different contexts. But the board view of the portfolio items that you have in managing it at the portfolio level really facilitate things like program increment planning and such on a more visual basis at a level where it harnesses things that you may find difficult to do in the Agile execution tool itself. On top of that, people have the need to do resource planning and capacity management. Being able to do that consistently across an entire portfolio of work, which might include some efforts that aren't Agile in the mix. And the idea to be able to bring that all together into one place and to look at your capacity versus demand and be able to marry those two things and be able to commit to work that's within the capacity of you to deliver. And the same thing goes true with financial plans. Just because we work in Agile doesn't mean people don't have to manage the financial and the budgeting aspects of that. And be able to provide that on a more detailed time phase basis is something which OnePlan brings to the party. Now, on the execution level, I will say this, OnePlan does have tools in itself that allow you to do more waterfall planning like you see on the left. You can build your schedules right there in OnePlan, or you could connect to popular waterfall tools like Microsoft Project for the web, Planner, Smartsheet, etc. On the left, there's the concept of, more of an agile plan, or more of a backlog and sprint plan. And you can build that right in OnePlan itself, but we have built-in connectors for things like Jira and Azure DevOps to be able to get that data from that source if that's where people are executing their agile work primarily. And then consistent status reporting across all that. What we're about is really reducing any duplication of effort or manual effort on top of just managing the process within the tool set. If we can relieve that duplication of effort, that the status that you provide in the execution tool, and then have to provide yet another set of status, say, for example, to your EPMO or your PMO, or to your portfolio manager in order so that they can report it at that level, is generally extra effort that we can remove from that process if we do this correctly. And the thing is demand as well. Demand comes from many sources in organizations. That intake of ideas and requests could come from just ideas from your workforce. It could come from requests from people in your organization. It could be opportunities if you're a customer-facing organization that does projects. It could be opportunities in the CRM system. But the idea is to be able to get that funnel and bring that together so that you can prioritize and select the work before you execute on it, to make sure that we're working on the right things for the organization. And OnePlan does provide a place for you to do that all in one place, whether you do it here or we, as we talk about with our connectors later on, connect to solutions that have that information. And the idea is to be able to prioritize and have analytics to help us make the best intelligent decisions on what we should be working on and when to promote these to projects, if at all. Now, there's also the element of strategic portfolio management, and organizations have to have a strategy so that they can align to making sure that they're working on the right things. And OnePlan provides the capabilities within it for strategic execution. In this case, we're showing OKRs, or objectives and key results, where leadership can actually track the progress of their strategic plan and how we're doing on fulfilling on that strategy. Now, how this correlates to what we're going to talk about today is, we might have a strategic plan, we might track that strategic plan, but there's going to be all kinds of initiatives, projects, epics, et cetera, in our organization that are going to be in execution to fulfill or drive the desired outcomes that those strategies actually have the vision for. And in OnePlan, we provide all those capabilities that we just talked about, but we also have the ability to align those strategies with what's going on at the execution level to make sure that we're working on the right things and understand the impacts and the things that are related or associated that we have to consider in order to be successful in achieving that strategy and its outcomes. So if we think about that, this is a more mature type of approach, but if we go into a full strategic portfolio management concept, of which Agile portfolio management is part of that, we have to align with those things to make sure that we are working on the right things. So you might have business objectives in your OKRs, like grow revenue. You then might have tangible key results that'll help us measure whether or not we're making tangible progress towards that objective and that outcome. And then you might have enterprise architecture pieces, like a business capability or applications that are actually supporting that process, or that needs to be updated or considered in order to achieve that objective. And then you have the initiatives in there that all have to be worked on in conjunction with all that, and they all interrelate. And as we think about our prioritization, as we think about selection, as we think about the impacts of things as they're not progressing, we need to understand how these things are interrelated or associated and how they impact one another. And OnePlan helps you do all that. We have, as I mentioned, that strategic plan. We can outline the enterprise architecture elements in there and associate those with the initiatives and have that all visible right within OnePlan in an overall strategic context. Now, we also provide the ability to visualize these things. So as we add more of these things, the relationships and the associations get more complex. So we might look at, for example, some objectives or strategies and understand downstream what's related to this and what's associated, what key results, what projects and epics, what products, applications, and capabilities. The same thing would hold true from a project-specific or an epic-specific focus. What are related to that upstream and downstream as we go to analyze this? Now, we talked about associating this with this Agile portfolio management with Jira and Azure DevOps. And OnePlan has its own integration capability, what's called OneConnect, that allows us to connect with a variety of different tools. We see software development here, which includes the Agile tools like Azure DevOps and Jira. We have other work management tools like Microsoft Project and Smartsheet. We might have to connect to financial or ERP systems like Oracle, SAP, whatever it might be, etc. We might even connect to an enterprise architecture repository that's there to bring in some of that data to help us do what we do in OnePlan. The key is that there's out-of-the-box connectors in this platform that allows it all to coalesce and come together within OnePlan. So in the case we're going to talk about, today, you might be bringing Azure DevOps in. Now, this one's a hybrid picture where the Agile pieces might be coming into the portfolio in OnePlan via a connector that brings the Agile components into OnePlan. And it may go along with maybe some waterfall scheduling that either happens in OnePlan by itself or maybe in something like a Microsoft project. The same use case holds true with Jira. We have the same type of connectivity with Jira, and the same use cases are supported in Jira. But in the model we're going to talk about today, where maybe you're doing everything Agile, maybe you're doing nothing but Agile tools like Azure DevOps and Jira, and that data has to both roll up into portfolios because maybe you have some people doing Agile work in Jira, some doing Azure DevOps, and maybe you're not. Maybe everybody's doing all the Agile work in Azure DevOps or Jira holistically. But the idea is to bring that together and add the portfolio management capabilities that OnePlan brings to the mix. The program and portfolio management, the investment selection and approval, and the tracking of financial capacity planning. So as you think about this, you got OnePlan over here on the left, and you got Azure DevOps and Jira on the right. And the connectors have a variety of ways that can be configured, but here's just a common, scenario where the Agile tools below the line are okay on working on the work and the execution in the backlog, for example. They're very light or unable to do the things at the portfolio level to the extent that it's needed to be done. Now, you may have an intake process, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, that allows you to evaluate alternatives and suggestions, and they may come in as suggested things that we approve and say we want to do these things. And that may come in, let's say we tie off at the epic level, and the epics is what we do over in the portfolio. It could go down to another level or up another level, but the idea there is that maybe that then produces something in Azure DevOps or Jira at that epic level such that we can build out the rest of the backlog at the feature or user story level. That could be at the feature level potentially, but the idea there is that the approval and the portfolio management happened in OnePlan. Now, once it's over in the hands of Azure DevOps and Jira, you have to build out those backlogs and the user stories, the tasks, identify the bugs and those types of things. And that's data that can feed back from that Agile tool back into OnePlan and roll up to a portfolio level to get us the information that we need holistically, regardless of whether or not we're all Agile or not. It will come into the total portfolio to the extent that we have epics or projects that are connected to Azure DevOps and Jira. And once again, this will happen on a routine basis without the end user having to synchronize manually. Ultimately, providing this capability gives OnePlan the ability to provide Agile portfolio management. So the idea here is to be able to provide portfolios and work plans and financial management, resource management, even insights and reporting around that, and do that around whatever scaled methodology that you have here. And here's a portion of a SAFe methodology. And it can be bringing in execution data from a variety of different Agile tools like you see down here at the bottom. So the idea with OnePlan is we have the ability to define and track OKRs and measure business outcomes, because that's what we're really striving for, is those outcomes and delivering value. We want to make strategic investments using an Agile portfolio management framework and make decisions on what we're going to invest in based upon that framework. We can define resource and financial plans for the initiatives that we have in the organization. And we can leverage insights from Agile for reporting from all levels of what's going on, whether it be from the strategic level down through the execution portfolio, all the way down through the execution elements that are coming from the tools that we're executing in. Now, on top of that, we have another benefit that OnePlan allows what we call a fused user experience. Now, OnePlan is built for the Microsoft Cloud primarily in the fact that we authenticate through your Azure Active Directory, and we have built-in connectors to a variety of different Agile tools. But irrespective of the prior slide on the connector where we may be interchanging or exchanging data with the other tool sets, this is about the user experience. So for example, you could actually use OnePlan directly in a browser if you want to. It's designed to do that just fine. But let's just say your user experience about the overall solution might be in something like Microsoft's Power Apps, and there's a Power App. You can consume OnePlan from within Power Apps, and it's connected to that Power Apps environment. If you're in Teams, OnePlan is an authorized Microsoft Teams application, so you can access all the things we're going to talk about today right from Microsoft Teams. It is something that is prevalent today as far as collaboration and communication, and providing this portfolio management capability within Teams is something that you might want to afford yourself up. But in addition to connecting to the data, say in Azure DevOps, we can actually use OnePlan right within Azure DevOps. We have extensions that allow you to access the OnePlan capabilities while you're actively working within Azure DevOps without having to leave Azure DevOps. The same thing holds true with Jira. You have those extensions to allow you to actually use OnePlan right within Jira rather than only connecting to the data. And to round out the Microsoft pieces, we do the same things within OnePlan, within Dynamics 365 in Microsoft, and also in SharePoint as well. The key is to have users do less task switching and stay working in the tools that they work in every day and be more productive. The key there is less task switching, and if we automatically roll in all that data into a common portfolio without having to provide status at the execution level and the portfolio level and do status reports manually like many people are still doing today, we can get rid of costly and inefficient uses of time, whether it be the manual data crunching that has to happen, manual report creation, or data re-entry or double entry. We can eliminate that completely. And then instead of chasing team members down for manual status, it can flow through the system on a natural course of updating the things in your portfolio. And really, it does help by simplifying things and gives us a likelihood of having more completeness and timeliness of submissions. So with that, I'd like to transition over to a demonstration to show you some of these things in action. So, there's a number of different flexible configurations that you can have, and I'll show you a couple here. OnePlan in this portfolio view, which is a list view right now, which is a list of elements that I'm looking at, we can have different portfolio plan or plan type hierarchies. In this particular case, a common one that we see is people want to have portfolios, and within those we have programs. And then within those programs, we may have projects and or epics. And those projects might have deliverables, and epics might have features that roll up into those epics that we have to do. The key is you can structure the structure if you have a hybrid or a cherry-picked version of a scaled a portfolio that you'd like. You can do it in any way that you choose. In this particular case, if I look at that and I expand out this, notice I have portfolios with programs within it. And then within the programs, I have epics and projects that happen within those programs. And where applicable, within the epics, I have features that are coming over, as well as deliverables within the projects. The key is how I structure it for my organization, for the way I want to do things, is completely up to me in the way that I'd like to do that. Okay, so if you notice here, we have links or icons of different tools. For example, we have a feature that's actually coming over and an epic that's coming over from Jira. In this case, I've got an epic and some features that are coming over from Azure DevOps. I also notice here that some don't have any icons next to them, meaning that they're not connected to any tools, and you might be working on that solely within OnePlan if you choose to do that, if you're not married to the use of, say, an Azure DevOps or a Jira. So the key there is it's very flexible on how you would structure that. Now, to just go to a different model to show, just for the purposes of showing a different context here, is that I'm looking here at another portfolio here in OnePlan, but notice that the portfolio plan type hierarchy may be more conducive to a pure scaled agile approach or safe type of scenario where I've got portfolios and then I've got value streams within the portfolio, then I've got epics, and then within those epics, I've got features and user stories. And this is the case where I may be predominantly working on that, and we can embed into that the concept of the notion of projects with deliverables as well. So as I expand this out, as you see this, I've got portfolios broken down, and I have different value streams within there. Within those value streams, I might have projects and or epics, and then within that, we can then drill into the different epics and features and deliverables that are there within that mix. So the key there is that it's flexible on how you would like to structure your portfolio. Now, Going back to this other model, let's talk about portfolios and views. Now, we have the concept here of, being able to view our portfolio in a variety of different ways. Here I'm looking at one view that's showing me some, budgets, some KPIs, what's associated with that, et cetera, in a summary view. I could also look at something that might be more, say, more of a prioritization view. And in that prioritization view, as I'm looking at some of these things, I might be, looking at weighted shortest job first calculations, and over here could be the values that were put into the different areas of business value, risk, and time criticality, cost of delay, et cetera, that are contributing to that score. So I have that. And by the way, we'll talk about intake and demand a little bit, and those could have come from the old initial request as well and promoted into this as we look at this from a more, feature-oriented perspective. If we drill into one of these, and notice here in this model here, I have a bunch of features, and I'm just showing features at this level where I'm coming in and saying, here's some that are coming in from Azure DevOps, here's coming in from Jira, some not connected at all. But if I drill into, say, this shipping and delivery feature, and I go in there, the first thing we might want to look at is the details around that. We have the ability to configure the forms of the data points that you would like to keep. We have templates that get you started on this, but the idea here is that you can capture the data and the metadata around that. You can capture narrative around, say, business cases or the value that you want to present. Also, the prioritization method. So, for example, the weighted shortest job first calculation is here, but also you might have other prioritization criteria that might be business driver related or something else that you might want to put in there. You also have the ability to have, summary information about things like, your feature points and story points, how your user stories are, your schedule, the financials around that, the effort, and even the KPIs and the features around that. And this is completely configurable on the things that you'd like to keep, as well as the overall life cycle or that you go through with any one of these features. Now, as I look at the work plan, and this is really where the connection to an Azure DevOps, for example, would happen. We have the concept, just like we have plan types within the portfolio, we've got the concept of work type. So in a work plan, I'm looking at a backlog work type here, and that's typically where the connection to the Agile tools come in. This is where the data for that comes into this backlog type. But you'll also notice that I have a schedule work type for more waterfallish type of things, and there's many use cases for that, which we'll talk about. You can also, in this same place, track your issue log and your risks and your changes and your key decisions. Some people add lessons learned to this and other things, so it's very flexible to capture all your work items in one place without having to go to different places to do that. Now, if I go into the work plan and let's just say, expand this. This is a small plan, but you'll see here that I've got user stories, and I got one user story with a task underneath that. But you'll also notice that this is, if I look at the Connected Systems tab, you can also see that I'm actually connected to Azure DevOps here. And in that being connected to Azure DevOps, it's actually routinely getting that information from the proper location of the proper feature within Azure DevOps. Now, if I come in here, I don't have to do anything to make that happen. Our OneConnect is done to routinely bring that information, typically hourly for something like this, to make sure that information comes over here without the end user in Azure DevOps having to do anything. But if you wanted to do something on demand, you could bring that data over on demand. Now, just to bring this into context, I went over to connect to the feature that I'm connected to within here, and where I'm getting the data is this feature shipping and delivery over in Azure DevOps. If you notice here, the children here are the two different user stories that are in here that is actually syncing back over into OnePlan. So as I look at this, the data that's in here, when we configure OneConnect, we determine what information we want to bring over here. Is it effort? Is it story points? Is it a combination of both of those things? Is it effort, information around that we would like to have? Now, there is a schedule work type in here where things that you're not tracking in Azure DevOps that leadership might want to see. You may put something in here as a schedule, like where you might put in a release schedule or some type of delivery schedule in there that the leadership wants to see that might not be in Azure DevOps. You might put a combined thing where you might have some waterfall components in here where you might want to show waterfall and Agile backlog items together in one view. And that's a way that we can leverage this schedule work type. So just be aware there's flexibility at this work item level, just like there is up at the portfolio level. Now, other aspects in OnePlan for this particular feature is that you can actually put together your resource plans. And resource plans can be done in a variety of ways. You can actually add named individuals. You could structure this by teams. You could structure it by generic roles or resource types, or some combination thereof. And the nice thing here is I'm showing this as planned in hours, but these things can also be planned, say, or shown in, say, FTEs or percentages of effort. So however you'd like to plan, you can toggle between those different modes to get the resource visibility that you would like to and see where we're over and under allocated. Now, in relation to everything else that's going on, I can see that Ehrlich is actually over allocated beyond what he has because he has other things outside of this project. And the cool thing here is that it's always looking in context of everything in the organization. So as I'm looking at different candidates to put in here, and if I wanted to say relieve an Ehrlich of something, I could say, let me find a best match and see what resources might be available that might have the bandwidth to take this on instead of Ehrlich and be able to replace those resources here. And we can look at these things in a variety of ways. You know, we can group these resources down here, you know, by business unit, by role, by team, et cetera, and look at those things in that way and be able to match to our methodology and the way we look at resourcing. We also have a financial planning capability in here that allows us to structure the financials in a way that we see fit. Now, the resource planning can be leveled and leveraged such that we don't have to redo the labor piece. There's rates associated with our resources in here that can be done that way, and then automatically bring the labor costing and the timing of that labor costing in here from the resource planning. But it also gives us the ability to have non-labor things put in here. So if I wanted to track when we're going to get costs for software and other things like that in here, I can get that information in here as well. And I can track different cost types, whether it be budgets, revised forecasts, actuals, and I can even track benefits or anticipated revenue in here if I want in the same time phased fashion. And I can even compare, say, my budget to my forecast, my budget to my actuals, et cetera, and be able to look at what that looks like on a comparison basis as well. And even have different time horizons, so I can look at the timing. If I want to look at them, you know, over this year or maybe the next year, the next 5 years, or some custom range. The outlook or the horizon that you look at these financials is completely up to you. The other key piece is reporting, and we'll talk about reporting across this, but I mentioned consistent status reporting, and this is sometimes a very manual effort that people go through to do that. And if we can have a common format that we like our projects or our epics, say, for example, our features to report status on, we can actually have that information automatically populated in here such that the current state can be automatically populated into the status report. We can leave room for narrative in here. So each reporting period, we can actually put our own unique narrative in there regarding this particular status. And it can be just added to the mix of what comes in here. And when we submit these each period, we actually are creating a history over time of the information and each of the status reports that were submitted each reporting period. And we can even turn on snapshotting so that we can do trending based upon the data that's in here and see how we trend over time against all that information. Now, people can come look at those status reports right in the solution if they're users, but we can also, for external or other audiences, export these status reports to PDF, Word, or email in the body of an email. The key is that everything can be done right in here and coalesce all this thing into one place, one plan. Now, if I go back out to the portfolio, and let's say we have this one that's connected to Jira. And I can drill, by the way, directly without drilling in. I can go right into the work plan or any element of that directly and come into here. And as I look at the work plan and the backlog around here, I see that all I have is 2 user stories that came in from Jira at this point. And I can also see that this particular item is connected to Jira. So if I go to open this item in Jira, once again, you'll see I'm connected just like I was in Azure DevOps to this. And the idea there is that the elements that are in here, and as I add to the backlog here, and as I update things and data in here, the same synchronization via OneConnect is going to happen that happened with Azure DevOps. And the key there is that I can work within here if I'm a Jira user, that this is where I live for the execution. I never have to leave here to do that stuff, and the information will be transmitted and updated into OnePlan. To be quite honest, you can actually update and access OnePlan features from within here as well. Now, if I go back to the portfolio and I look at just the features in here, and let me just go to, things like we talked about associating, and I'll get into how we got here in the first place, but we talked about objectives and key results, and we talked about some of the enterprise architecture stuff that we might have. Notice that these features have associated key results that are in the strategic plan. They also have associated products, okay, that are from the more enterprise architecture elements within the solution. And so as we do this, and I'll get into where those things reside in OnePlan, but let's just say I go down to loyalty points. And in this feature, I want to show what I showed before, the visualization of how these things are all interrelated. When I open this up, I can see that loyalty points has to happen before this weighted scoring has to happen in there from a feature perspective. But from an overall runway perspective, notice I've got loyalty points as the feature that I'm focused on. But upstream from that, we can see that I actually have two objectives or strategies that this thing is associated or is depending on us for. And there's two tangible key results, one from each objective that is tied to or related to this particular loyalty point. And notice that these things are in the yellow, which means that it's, getting a little bit off track, as well as this feature itself. Now, from an enterprise architecture perspective, notice that we're also related and have associated applications that have to be considered in order to succeed with this feature, as well as products they're related to as well. So when we talked about that whole enterprise architecture interrelation, you don't have to tackle all those enterprise architecture elements of it right away as you go into this, but know that the vision is there, that if you want to aspire to get to this place, OnePlan is a tool that can help you get there incrementally over time and get the value from the solution incrementally as you're ready to take it on. All right, so let's see where some of this stuff came from. The enterprise architecture piece that has the elements here that we're related to in here, came from, the different plan types that we have in this enterprise architecture. So in this enterprise architecture, we have a product portfolio, we have a capabilities or business capabilities portfolio, we have an application portfolio, and we have a portfolio of value streams that we can associate our our initiatives with in the solution. Another approach to having value stream association. Now, if I look in here into the enterprise architecture and I show those plan types, let me go into expand this. And notice that here in this composite view, I've got a mixture of applications, capabilities, products, value streams, etc. And notice if I drill into any one of these, I can capture the key elements in this application portfolio about life cycle of the application and application details around vision and strengths and timeline and life cycle and what things it's actually related to. It's related to other items in here, like other capabilities or ideas, or it's even aligned to certain epics within the solution. All those associations can be managed right from within here. Now, as I go, look at this, and I want to visualize other relations from here from just this perspective, let's just say from a value stream perspective, and I want to visualize the relations of, say, this value stream overall, I can see that I actually have a predecessor that this has to happen before I can do procure to pay. But once again, that runway view, and here's something gets very complex. This quote to cash value stream is supporting a number of key results in 3 different strategies, one of which, one strategy has gone yellow, and one of these key results has actually gone red. Notice downstream that this value stream is associated with different products and applications and business capabilities as we go through here. And at any given point in time, as I want to look at something within this, I can drill through to any particular item from here. So for example, this quote to cash, I can actually even just open a quick edit. And if I want to look at the details around this, I can come in here and see any of the information around that particular value stream. And I can also very quickly look at details and narratives around that, as well as the associations. Like here's associated items that we're associated with, which in this case is a combination of different enterprise architecture elements, as well as any associated initiatives, which right now I'm not associated to any initiatives, but most cases things probably would be. So just give you a highlight of some of that capability there. Another aspect of this, as we look at it to a more of a team focus within more agile approaches, we can define teams within here. In this case, I've defined different teams like the blueprint, the bite, the network, the power team, the A team, etc. And as I look through those teams, we can define those teams and what they are, but we can also associate them with specific individual resources. So if I come in here and I look at, say, the blueprint team, I can see that this blueprint team is associated with a number of different initiatives, in this case, a whole slew of features that this team is working on right now. And I can get the details around those and drill into any one of those at any given point in time. But I can also then associate at the resource plan level, I can also go into the resource center. And as I define these resources in the resource pool, let me take a look at Adam Barr, for example. If I go into his details on here, I can associate him with any one of the teams that we've defined within this solution so that we can have that drill in to individual people and their team association. Now, some organizations may only assign things at the team level. Some things might put things and say this team's working on it, and then want to define which individuals are working on which pieces of that. That's up to you, but just know that that capability of that association is in here. The other element that we have in here that helps us with program increment planning is a set of PI planning elements. In this case, we've outlined all of the different program increments and the timeframes and the sprints that are in each of those program increments, and we can associate these at any given point in time with anything that you would like to work with, and we'll show you how that's used. But the idea is all these elements come together all in one place. Now, overall, we have a resource planning function that allows us to look at, and I showed you earlier a resource plan just for one in particular feature. But as we roll all this stuff together and look at it in the aggregate, here I'm looking at a resource plan grouped by team. And let's say, for example, I go into that bite team and I look and see who might be on it. I still have generic developer stuff still assigned, but let's take a team member on here. I can look and see that Jin Yang is on a number of different elements within our plan, and look at the elements that are in there. Now, once again, I could look at this in terms of hours or FTEs, or we can convert story points into any one of these. But for example, here, I can see with the planning I have in here that I've got Jin Yang over allocated in these 3 months, right on the money here in June, and slightly over allocated here. And we might want to consider what we need to do to get him off of certain things within here. The key there is that the resource planning can be done at a more global level, and we can look at things by teams. We can maybe look at things by role, or whatever visibility you'd like to have on these types of things as we do resource planning. Once again, an element across the board that we bring to the mix over and above what the Agile execution tools will bring you. Now, we talked about intake and demand. There is also an ideation area within OnePlan that allows us to capture requests either directly in here, and we have a mode that allows it to be a portal for all users in your organization so that people can put requests in here, and then other users in a more fulfilling role, more, let's just say complete users can actually come in here and evaluate and approve these things. And you can, just like with the other elements in here, you can define an approval lifecycle, the data you'd like to capture in here, potentially, the business case in here, or maybe you might have the elements in here for an epic hypothesis that would have things like your financials and your Agile scoring for weighted shortest job first, or other prioritization method. And even if you understand maybe up front what some associations that you have, that you might be able to get those in there as well. So the key here is that when you go through this process, and either through workflow or doing it manually in here by approving these things, at the appropriate time, you can take these ideas or requests and you can reorganize or promote them such that you could take this idea or this request and promote it to an epic or a project and carry forth with it all the details that were done in the idea of the request without having to rekey that into a separate system. The idea is you can flow end to end from cradle to grave from the idea all the way through. Now, the modeler is the ability for us to come in here and do what if scenarios. So if I go into the modeler, the key here is that we can have different scenarios for different parts of the organization. And it's very flexible in the fact that you can actually add different models and select which elements, whether they be epics or features or projects or some of all the above, what criteria you'd like to have to come in here to select what would go into this model. So you don't have to do the entire portfolio. In the interest of time, I'm going to go into one that's already done. So this feature prioritization is a model that was done that allowed us to, in this case, it's already evaluated 2 different scenarios. In this case, the features that are in here are determined to be the ones that we want to get done in this model. And we want to put some constraints on this to understand if we can do these things at all. Now, one model might be, the first scenario might be where we had a $3 million budget, say. And in that $3 million budget, we wanted to understand what we could fit and what we could get done based on that constraint and the priorities in order to make that happen. And the idea here is that, you know, in one scenario, might have different constraints. And I think what I'll do is I'll go right to a scenario here. And let me just go try this first scenario again. And in this first scenario, trying to come within a $3 million budget, which we have, it's selected based on priorities, or we selected in priorities, what's in and what's out, what's below the line and what's above the line. And in another scenario, we might do something more constrained, like we only have, say, $2.5 million and what that is. But to cut to the chase, we can analyze a comparison between the two. And in those models, you'll notice that in the scenario 2, which has a $2.5 million constraint, we can only do 11 of those features as opposed to 15 in the first one. But we also wanted to set some targets about, you know, feature points, for example, or target benefits. So for example, if we spend only $2.5 million, we can only expect $4 million in benefits. If we spent the $3 million, we might get another $500,000. We might get another $1.8 million in benefits. So the key there is we can run these comparisons and even compare details. So if I was going to compare the details of scenario 1 versus scenario 2 and compare them, for example, I can see which elements or features are in, which ones are out. And in some cases, you might see that they change prioritization score based upon the different scenarios that we have. And we can even look at this from a charting or dashboard perspective to compare these. So if I compared scenario 1 with scenario 2, for example, and compare this from a charting perspective, I can look at this. Now, if I'm really trying to make this work from another scenario perspective, and I get rid of the analysis here, I could potentially come in here and look at this, say, from a resource constrained perspective and see if I do all the things in here that I'm contemplating doing, it's going to take this amount of resourcing to do that. Now, I might decide that, you know, I can't do everything, so I have to decide which maybe 2 things I eliminate from here and see how it changes the resource profile down below based upon this hypothesis and move those from in to out. So now I only have 15 things in there. But I could also come into here and I could look and put in, say, a Gantt chart view in here, and I could decide on some of these I can decide I might want to delay some of these out and say, you know, what does that do to the resource profile? So I can do a combination of things and save yet another scenario that says, here's something that might be doable based upon the resources that we have. The idea there is that we can do this either from a resource constraint perspective, or we can do it from a financial constraint perspective and do the same things with the idea of fitting the selections up above within the time phase budgets that we have. Now, in the portfolio, the key here from an Agile perspective is we have the ability to do boards at the portfolio level as well. So as we're doing some of that strategic planning and understanding what we can do, here we're leveraging a board where the columns are actually the program increments that I show you that we had modeled. We also have this shown now by budget and dollars within each program increment, so we can tie those off there. But we can also do these things in a variety of other ways. If I was going to look at this, say, from a story points perspective, I could look at this and see what story points are we have and seeing if we're over and under what our targets are for the story points that we'd like to have within there. If I go to zoom out to get a better view of this, I can take a look and see how things are also interrelated here, and even get down to the details of maybe what this proposed feature is, and go into a quick edit over here like I did prior and get the details around this feature and understand what it's related to and what we need to do in order to work with this thing, and how, other criteria as to why we might want to have this in here or not have this in here as a result of our PI planning. And we can move into here any backlog items into the mix if we want to. We can even pre-filter these things based on criteria about how they're associated with different programs or et cetera. So the key is that we can work with this in a very agile board fashion. The last piece I'll show you is the strategy piece. And this is where we look at the objectives and key results. We've done a number of different webinars on this, but the idea here is as we look at this from this perspective, we can take a look at any of these and say, you know, let's just say we were going to look at a visualization of this increased brand awareness objective and want to see how this is related with other things. We can get that view very easily from the focal point of a strategy as well. So with that, I'd like to go back to our presentation and talk about summary and next steps. So we talked about how organizations are striving for more agility. We talked about how the use of multiple tools and methodologies is prevalent in the marketplace today, and that OnePlan provides flexible portfolio management wherever you are on that journey. OnePlan also helps you provide scaling and consistency in the use of Agile execution tools, and OnePlan can support any of the Agile scaling frameworks that you might choose to use or some hybrid of that. Users can continue to work in their Agile execution tool of choice, and OnePlan provides all work, resources, and financial information in one common hub, and also provides strategy, execution, and alignment. The teams can continue to be agile as they need to be, but leadership can get the visibility and the metrics they require in addition to that if some of them are non-agile as well. Ultimately, by bringing this all together in one place, we facilitate better collaboration and decision support across all areas of the business, and put you on a path to whatever degree of strategic portfolio management you want to get in conjunction with your agile portfolio management. Now, OnePlan's passionate about this. And we get recognized, especially by Microsoft, for our leadership in project and portfolio management. And they've named us in the last 4 years as the global PPM leader in project portfolio management. We also get recognized by the analysts like Gartner and Infotech Research, and we're also a scaled Agile partner. Now, our next webinars that we're going to do, we do these almost on a weekly basis, are coming up. One is optimizing new product development with OnePlan product portfolio management. And then following that, showing how that product portfolio management concept can be enabled, integrating Jira and Azure DevOps into that as well. Now, you can get started on a free trial. You can go up to Microsoft's App Source, and there is an Agile portfolio management up there, as well as other templates that you could start with in order to start your trial. And we're happy to help you and assist you on that to get you on the right track with that if you so desire. We also are available within the Atlassian marketplace. So if you want to go out there and get this for your Jira use, please feel free to do that as well. We do offer things like free roadmap workshops. If you want to understand what it's going to take to get you from point A to point B, from the solutions you're in today to get into something like that, we're happy to do a workshop with you in order to do some discovery and understand what it would take and kind of see what that might look like for you. Ultimately, the free trials are there, the roadmap workshops are there, and if you're not quite ready to do any of that yet, I gave a very high-level overview demo of a lot of different elements of the solution. If you want to do a deeper dive or do things more related to your own use cases and scenarios, contact us for a personalized one-on-one demo. You can reach out generally to us at contact@oneplan.ai and read more about the solution at www.oneplan.ai. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time today. The OnePlan provides you that one place to bring everything together. We call it the power of one. And if you want to reach out to me directly for any reason, my information is here. You will be getting a copy of these slides and a link to the recording of this presentation. So we provide you one interface, one experience, and one plan. We really look forward to engaging with you. Hope you have a great day.